Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the fifth and final episode of my Fantasy Caro Kann masterclass. The move we will be examining today is Queen to b6 from the black side. As always, the PGN file is the first link in the description, and without further ado, let's begin this episode. So after black plays the move Queen to b6, we respond with knight c3, and here we reach our first branching point. Either black will play pawn to e5, black might also play d takes e4, f takes e4 followed by e5. Finally, black can play the move pawn to e6. So these are the three moves we will be examining. Let's begin with the move pawn to e5. So after black plays pawn to e5, we take this pawn on e5, and this gives black bishop to c5. And as you can see, black has very nice pressure down this diagonal with this battery. Black is threatening to win the knight on g1, black is threatening bishop f2 check. So here it's very important to play the correct move. And in general, like 95% of the time, whenever we see this construction, we play the move knight to a4. This is, by the way, the reason it was so important to play the move knight c3 immediately after queen b6, right? This gives us the option of playing knight to a4. So knight to a4, and here black will either play bishop f2 check or queen a5 check. Let's begin with the move bishop f2 check. So we are in check, we have to move our king. Of course, if we move our king to d2, this gives black queen e3 checkmate, so please do not fall for this. So for this reason, we bring our king to e2. In this position, black really only has one move, which is queen to d4. If in this position, black plays either queen a6 check or queen b5 check, looking to give up the dark squared bishop in exchange for our knight on a4, well, this just leads to a very favorable trade for us. Let's see how this can look like. Queen a6 check, king takes f2, queen takes a4. The best move in this position is to play queen to d2. And yes, while it is very counterintuitive to block our bishop, we are actually threatening to play the move pawn to b3. And the queen will be trapped, right? a3 is held by the bishop, and this queen is holding a5, b4, and d4, while the light squared bishop is covering the rest of the squares. So many opponents will not see this and will play something like knight to e7. If your opponent does see it, there are only really two ways to get out of this. Either to play d takes e4 or to play a5. So these are the two moves we will be looking at. If d takes e4, we play b3, black will play e3 check. Here we take on e3, queen to a5, bishop d2, queen c7, and we are looking to rotate this bishop to d6. Bishop to b4, bishop to d6. There's no need to analyze any further. This bishop is beautifully placed on d6. Remember, black does not have a dark squared bishop. Black only has two knights. So it's actually quite difficult for black to get rid of this bishop on d6. The computer gives about plus 2.5. Rook d1. We can always castle by hand. We have a very nice position. If instead of the move d takes e4, black plays pawn to a5, once again we play b3, queen to b4, and now we trade the queens. Queen b4, a b4, and we will win this pawn on b4. We take on d5, c d5, bishop to d2. Already you can see that this pawn is very weak. If knight a6, we can simply take that knight, and if knight c6, bishop to b5, this is a pin. The pawn on b4 will be lost. We're going to be a pawn up. We're going to win this game. So for this reason, both queen a6 and queen b5 are mistakes because this trade only benefits white. For this reason, queen to d4 is advisable. We take on d4, bishop takes d4, and as mentioned in the introductory video, pawn to f4. Black will most likely play d takes e4, and we get this specific pawn structure. In this position, I recommend to move the bishop to e3, and because the dark squared bishop has no squares, black will be forced to enter into this trade. Black can throw in this check, but we simply slide our king and black has to take on e3. Bishop takes e3, king takes e3, and just look at how active our king stands on e3. We are already looking to win this pawn, and the only two ways to defend this pawn are either pawn to f5 or bishop to f5. If bishop to f5, this is a huge mistake because this gives us the move knight to c5. We are threatening b7 and e4. If black plays b5, we don't take this pawn immediately. We go knight b7, looking to get in on d6. After knight e7, we give this check. We can take the bishop, take on e4, we are completely winning. And if instead black plays pawn to f5, here we need to play a little bit slower. Here I would recommend to bring the rook to d1. More likely than not, black will play knight to e7, looking to bring the knight to d5. And here we play the very important move, pawn to c4. We are covering this square, and now it's about making slow improving moves. Knight to c3, maybe h3 g4 to undermine this pawn structure, maybe knight e2, knight g3, maybe bishop e2, maybe rook d6. You slowly but surely make improving moves. In general, you will always have a slight advantage because your king is optimally placed on e3, blockading the e4 pawn. And if in this position black decides to throw in the move bishop to g4 check, well, this is actually not a very good move because after king d2, once again, black is forced to take on e3, the bishop has no moves, and this bishop on g4 is actually very, very misplaced. Already we are looking to play h3 and g4, which binds the f5 square, making us able to take this pawn on e4. If knight d7, we can bring our knight back to c3, looking to win this pawn, pawn to f5, defending the pawn. And now you can really see why this bishop is misplaced on g4. h3, bishop h5, g4. We get these two moves for free, and already you can see we are creating some very, very nice tension. If f takes g4, this drops the e4 pawn, and look at this juicy d6 square. Long castles, we can play h takes g4. If bishop takes g4, then knight d6, knight f7 wins the rook. And if black plays something like bishop g6, pawn to f5, once again, bishop f7, knight d6 wins. And if bishop to e8, well then, knight to f3, rook to d1. Even though the material objectively is equal, we're only a pawn up, the computer gives plus 4.2 simply because of the amount of space we have. We're looking to bring our king to f4 and move this entire mass forward very, very slowly. For this reason, throwing in the move bishop to g4 check is a huge mistake because this gives us h3 g4 with tempo. So that's basically everything you need to know about bishop f2 check. You bring your king to e2, queen d4 is virtually forced, you trade the queens, you play f4, and you're really looking to win this pawn on e4. If in this position black decides to play queen a5 check, looking to win this knight on a4, we do not bring our knight back to c3, this runs into d4, we lose the knight, we play pawn to c3, and the best thing black has is to take on g1, rook g1, de4, pawn to f4, and once again we get this specific pawn structure. Now the difference here is that the queens are still on the board. In the other position, starting with bishop f2 check, we were able to trade the queens, which meant we were able to bring our king to the center of the board. But with the queen still on the board, it's not recommended to bring your king to e3. The best move in this position is knight d7, and here we play the move pawn to b4. Let's go back here. In general, regardless what black plays, we're looking to expand with pawn to b4. This gives us a nice space on the queen side. So knight d7, b4, queen d8, queen d4, plus over minus. And already you can see how difficult it is to defend this pawn from the black side. If black wants, they can play the move pawn to f5, but this comes at a huge cost. Bishop e3, knight d7, long castle. Look at this position for white. Computer gives plus 2.5. Look at the control we have of the d6 square. It's not advisable for black to castle short because of h3 g4, because of bishop to c4. We simply have more space, we have more activity, we are much better. If instead of knight d7, black decides to play knight e7, once again we play pawn to b4, gaining some space, and here black plays queen d5. We are now following a game between two grandmasters. Of course, we do not want to take the queen, this just corrects black's pawn structure. Queen to c2, b6, bishop b2, pawn to e3. Black decides to push this pawn. Bishop d3, bishop f5. We get some trades. Pawn to c4. And black decides to relinquish, to concede basically, and play queen d2 check. And this gives us basically the pawn for free. Now the rest of the game isn't all that important. It's actually quite funny. Black unfortunately brings this knight too far forward. It gets trapped on d2. And with a piece up, black will unfortunately lose this game. Yeah, I mean, at some point, white has the outside passed pawn. And in this position, black resigns. So as you can see, it's very difficult for black to play with this e4 pawn. If black plays bishop to f5, this runs right into h3, g4. And if black plays f5, well, as we saw in the other example, this comes at a huge cost, right? Bishop to c4, queen d4, bishop e3, long castles. It's never ever easy for black. And this is why I believe you will always have winning chances whenever you enter this specific pawn structure. So that's basically everything you need to know about pawn to e5. We're taking on e5, bishop c5, knight a4. Either black will play queen a5 check or bishop f2 check. If bishop f2, king e2, black will play queen d4. We will enter this specific pawn structure. And if queen a5 check, pawn to c3, bishop g1, rook g1, de4, pawn to f4. Once again, we reach that specific pawn structure. And then it's really about playing against the weak e4 pawn. Real quick, before I get into the other variations, it's also possible in this position, instead of queen to b6, it is called the queen b6 variation. It is possible for black to play pawn to e5 in this position. And after d takes e5, bishop c5, knight c3, queen b6, we transpose into this position via a different move order. Just something to keep in mind. Now let's move on to the second variation, d takes e4. So here we have several moves. We can play bishop c4, we can play knight takes e4, but in my opinion, it's in the spirit of the fantasy variation to always have two pawns in the center whenever you have that option. Here, black has to play pawn to e5, otherwise we have a superior position. Here we play knight f3. Black will play e takes d4, looking to open up this diagonal, as we know. Here we can play queen takes d4, but after queen d4, knight d4, this just leads to virtually an equal endgame. So knight takes d4, bishop c5, and once again we get this construction. What is the correct move? Knight to a4. The only move in this position is queen a5 check. We play pawn to c3, we are threatening b4, and we are also threatening to take the bishop on c5, giving us the bishop pair. So black will more likely than not either play bishop d6 or bishop e7. The correct move is bishop to d6, because at some point black will want to bring this bishop back to c7, and black will have this very nice battery looking at some h2, looking at some g3 ideas. If black instead plays bishop to e7, this is an inaccuracy because this gives us b4, and if queen c7, the bishop is not on the optimal square, black does not have the nice battery. Bishop to c4, knight f6, castles, bishop d6, and here we are following a game between two grandmasters, and here white plays the phenomenal move bishop to h6. Now the correct move in this position would be to take on h2, and after king h1, rook g8, bishop g7, rook g7, rook f6, queen g3, the game continues, but unfortunately black plays short castles, and this gives white rook takes f6, bishop takes h2 now, unfortunately it's too late, king h1, bishop e5, rook takes f7. And after rook f7, knight f3, unfortunately white ends up playing e5, e takes f6, the king on g8 is very open, bishop takes f7, the queen infiltrates on the back rank, and at some point in this position, black resigns. Rook e7, queen f6, there's simply way too many threats. So as you can see, the move bishop to e7 isn't great because this gives us b4, and then we have very nice development with the open f file, queen f3, maybe bishop e3. We simply have a very nice game. So for this reason, bishop d6 is better, because here if we were to play b4, well now black has queen c7 and the battery is already set up. right? Black doesn't have to waste time bringing this bishop back to d6. So for this reason, we bring our knight back to f3. We do not play the move b4 precisely because of this powerful battery. Queen c7, queen d4 plus over minus. We are attacking the g7 pawn. If black plays the knight f6, well, this gives us e5. This is a fork. And black will have to play the weakening move pawn to f6. Bishop e3, long castles, bishop c4, we have a comfortable position. So that's everything you need to know about d takes e4. We recapture pawn to e5, knight to f3, ed4, knight d4, bishop c5. We play knight a4, black will have to retreat the bishop, and the rest is pretty simple, pretty logical. Let's now take a look at the final move, which is pawn to e6. So against pawn to e6, it's very, very important to play the move pawn to a3. This is literally the only move you have to remember. Black is looking to bring the bishop to b4. We cannot allow this. We have to play a3. In this position, black will either play knight f6 or knight d7. If knight to f6, this will lead us to a typical French structure after e5, f4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. If we want, we can play the move bishop to e3. Don't quote me on this, but I believe this is known as the Steinitz variation of the French defense. This is highly theoretical though, so for this specific reason, I recommend the move d takes c4, and after bishop takes c4, I think you can guess what the correct move is. Yes, it is knight to a4. Black will either play queen a5 check or bishop f2 check. If bishop f2 check, we bring our king to e2. Once again, king d2 runs into queen e3 checkmate. So king e2, queen a6 or queen b5 is forced, right? Queen d4 isn't an option anymore. We've developed our knight. We take on f2, queen takes a4, bishop d2. And here, black needs to be very, very careful. If black plays a move like short castles, we play b3 and we end up trapping the queen. Queen e4, bishop to d3, and the queen is trapped. So for this reason, black has to play the move knight e7, giving way for the queen to escape. But here we simply play bishop to b4. We're looking to infiltrate on d6. We can always castle by hand. That's never a problem. And we obtain a very nice position. If instead of bishop f2 check, black plays queen a5 check, well here c3, bishop e7 is forced. Remember, we're threatening pawn to b4. And after bishop e7, guess what the correct move is? Pawn to b4. Whenever the queen is on a5, like 90% of the time, we're playing b4 to gain some space. Queen c7, bishop d3. Look at this position. This pawn on e5 is beautiful. It's nicely protected by the pawn on f4. We have very, very nice development. We can play queen e1, queen g3. If you watched my previous episode, we can always bring our knight to c5, bishop e3, bishop b2 maybe. Maybe we bring this knight to d4. We have more space. We have more options. We have a very, very comfortable game. So that's if black plays knight f6. We play e5 and we get this typical French structure. If instead black plays knight d7, well, here we play the move bishop to e3. And at first glance, it looks like we are blundering the b2 pawn. But if black decides to play queen takes b2, we play knight a4 and the queen is trapped. This is another reason why it was so important to play this move pawn to a3. Yes, we are preventing bishop b4, but later down the road, once we get our bishop out to e3, after queen takes b2, knight a4, black doesn't have the escape square on a3 because our pawn is there protected by the rook. So black can never take this pawn on b2. Knight gf6, bishop e2, we are baiting black once again to take the pawn on b2. If d takes e4, f takes e4, bishop e7, knight f3, I mean just look at this position. 2 pawns in the center, all of our pieces are developed, we are looking to castle short, maybe we'll play queen e1, queen g3 in the future. We have a very comfortable and nice position. So that's essentially everything you need to know about the queen b6 variation. Just to recap, we are playing knight c3, and here black has 3 options. Either pawn to e5, this is the most common move, d takes e4, or the move pawn to e6. Against e6, we are looking to play a3, looking to develop normally. Remember, after bishop to e3, the b2 pawn is poisonous because of knight a4, so that's never dangerous. Against pawn to e5, we are taking this pawn, bishop c5 and the important move knight to a4. If d takes e4, f takes e4, pawn to e5, we play knight f3, e takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop c5, and once again the move knight a4. In general, that's really all you have to remember. You bring your knight out to c3, whenever black has the queen on b6 and the bishop on c5, we play knight a4. If e6, we play a3, that's really everything you have to know. So with all that being said, we have reached the end of the Fantasy Caro Kann masterclass. Once again, I will mention the PGN file is the first link in the description. Thank you all so much for watching and see you guys in the next video.